I know Kung Fu.
Show me.
You are the new student. Come closer.
You're listening to the Kung Fu Podcast presented by James Still.
I don't care if it's Muhammad, Imard, Bruce Lee.
And Steve Newby.
This is the original Five Fingers of Death right here.
But my hands are registered as lethal weapons. That means we get into a fight, I accidentally kill you, I go to jail.
Right, we're all set. We're all jacked up on coffee and sweeties. And have you got an arrow? Have you got your chocolate?
I've just had a nice big bacon breakfast.
Ooh, well, to be fair, it wasn't
at 1
big.
o'clock.
It wasn't that big. Those bacon just shrunk like I don't know.
That's the one thing. There's a couple of things that are amiss in England. The one thing is bacon.
Yeah.
And the other thing is history.
Well,
you know,
yeah,
I mean,
look on the bright side. You've got beautiful big blue skies. You've got lovely fresh mountain air, and the population is like 1/3, and you've got like a landmass of how many times bigger is it than the UK?
Well, I don't know, but the BC alone is 4.5 times bigger than the UK.
There you go.
And it's got 4.11 million people in it.
Jesus Christ! Oh my God! Right, listen, you're getting me dead jelly. I've got to go over there at some point, haven't I? Anyway, we got to start. Guys, welcome to podcast 16 with my teacher Steve and of course me, James. We are the UK's #1 Kung Fu podcast, guys. You know. And that's not official, mind you, but I think we're probably the only. We're probably the only podcast. Oh, yeah. Guys, yeah. So, but guys, the proliferation of this podcast is down to you, and we'd like to thank you for tuning in and subscribing and all the rest of it.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of Lau followers now, a lot of Lau Gar.
Yeah.
People from various points of the UK, as well as some people abroad.
Oh,
and
yeah, absolutely.
And I just want to say, there is an official blog spot in the UK. So if you've got a question for us and we answer the question, you're always welcome to put it on the podcast. Absolutely. Question and answer. Yeah. And then you can verify it then whether it's true. Of course, you get a load of people who disagree, but I don't mind if people disagree. What I want to know is why they disagree, because the why and how are the most important things.
Yeah.
So people say, "Oh, don't do it that way." Well, as we've already said before, with the first set, 1,600,000 different ways of using those movements.
Yeah.
So there's got to be a why and a how.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
That's all I'm asking. I'll probably stick the little video answers on as well, as long as I don't mention the people's names.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I suppose even if I mention names, it's as long as it's not a double name, I might say, "Hello, Fred. This is for Fred."
Yeah.
And it kind of, might be okay with that.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. Do you know that we've got listeners across the globe? Did you know that?
Yeah.
We got people. We got obviously Canada, USA, but South America. I mean, in the USA, we've got listeners from coast to coast. People in Australia. Yeah, so guys, we'd love to hear from you. Just send us a line or a message, or send us a really groovy insult if you don't enjoy, if you don't agree with us.
a lot of them are probably going, "What the hell is this Lau Gar?" I thought that was a German gun.
Yeah,
Lau Gar.
a Luger, or an alcoholic beverage. Lager? What are you on about?
Yeah, that's what people used to look. They look at your T-shirts when you had Lau Gar across your T-shirt. What's that? What's that? Is that lager? You can't spell lager. You're drunk.
Oh, marvelous! Oh, it's great.
But no, it's. I suppose we have explained already what Lau Gar is. So we watch all the podcast or listen to all the podcasts.
Yeah,
then.
yeah, absolutely.
But certainly if you're doing another martial art, it's great if you send us a little video on your phone saying, I do this. What the hell am I doing? If you want. If you don't know what you're doing, your teacher's told you something that you are doing. Let's send it me, and I'll try and interpret it as if I was trying to decipher a code.
Oh, that's interesting. The thing is with martial arts or whatever, if we look at, we always talk about in the context of Lao, Chinese martial arts, but really the physicality of any martial art has got to make some logical sense.
Of course.
But it's how do you define logical sense, right? Because let's just generalize, right? So say you've got say karate, right, that want to create a lot of power with the techniques. For them, doing a block, bringing it back or swinging it out with a great bit of power is logical sense. But for us, that's not necessarily the case because we're focused a lot more on speed. So,
but it isn't our choice or their choice. It's science.
Yes, and it's
a concept of science. Now, if you're looking for something that is going to be ideal for fighting, if you're fighting big guys and whatever, and you want to use lots of power, then maybe you can make logical sense of that kind of thing. But there's lots of different answers in logic as well. It's not just down to one logical way. It's just got to make logical sense. So but one person's logical answer may not be as good as another person's logical answer, even though they both might be correct. So, but that's fine. That's what this debate is all about, is trying to find out, and what we're interested in, of course, is the non-logic, where people are doing techniques where they have an idea of why they're doing it, and then we can say, well, there is no logic in that answer, or that the way that you're doing that. So perhaps if you look at it this way, you can make more logical sense out of it. Or they could turn around and say, well, no, I do it this way because, and give us logical sense. We'll say, oh, you know what, I never even saw that.
An interesting thing is okay, so if we're talking to our friends across the pond here, well, that's where you are, but there's in America, let's face it, Wing Chun is the Kung Fu style, right? And when you look at, let's face it, when you look at Wing Chun and you look at Lau Gar and you put them side by side, you basically see the same techniques, all right, albeit done in a different order, which you do, to be fair. Let's face it. So when you say something like, if you study Wing Chun, give us a question and we'll try and answer it for you, you're not being sort of cocky or arrogant or anything like that. What you're basically saying is, listen, just your techniques are the same, and I will give you a reason for what you do. What you can't do, obviously, is say, the next move in Sulim Tao is this, and the next move in Chun Kyu is this, because that's impossible. But you're looking at the movements either in a prearranged sequence or individual.
I'm looking at the logic of the movements. You see, the perception of fighting, or the ideology, or the tactics and strategy, you can call it, of a different styles fighting, strategy in effect, will be and can be different to mine. But so can the guy down the street who still does Lau Gar.
Yes.
Different areas will have different ideas of doing things.
Or different size people, different
of course.
age people will all have different interpretations.
So we're not looking at changing anybody's perception of their style. We're just looking at trying to change their understanding or perception of the actual technique they're doing to try to make sense of it. And hopefully people will then start to think in a way that as they do a move, they will look at why they're doing that move, not because they're told to do that move, But why were they told to do that move in that way?
Absolutely. But it's a two-way. It's two-way traffic, guys. You can make us think about what we're doing as well. All you got to do is sense.
Yeah, I was talking to another gardener this morning. Another guardian. I was telling you this morning.
Another gardener.
Yeah, gardener. May as well be. No, you can't even get out that far. No, I was talking to another guardian, and I was just saying how what tends to happen when you watch or you get to know about other people's questions is you obviously then get a sense of how their people are teaching them or their teachers are teaching them, and so on, which is great. But you often come to realize that the kind of the history or the lineage, if you want, of various different areas differs considerably, and you can have some people who have managed to sustain the ideology of the Lau, of the movements, and then you have people who have gone off on a complete different tangent, but it's not their fault. But the problem is when they go off on a tangent, in time, their new instructors, their students, will go off in a tangent, and so will then their new instructors. So consequently, you have like not necessarily a completely different style, but a completely different take on it, and often they're just copying the movements without really understanding what they're for, mainly because the movements they've copied haven't got a meaning. They're just part of a set that they do. So when, as we said, the last podcast, when people do movements in a set, it doesn't necessarily equate to something that can actually be done in realistically, because they don't do it realistically in a set. They just perform a set. So when you do a set, every time you move, you've got to be doing something to somebody, or someone is doing something to you. But whatever happens, you're moving for that reason, with the exception of the odd, should I say, exercise.
Oh, you mentioned exercise. You can't mention exercise on our podcast. Anyway, never mind. Go on. Sorry, where were we?
With the exception of certain exercises. Oh shit! I've done it again.
Oh no!
Oh yeah.
Sorry, there's a bit of a lag in my
yeah.
God, yeah. Don't say the E word again.
Yeah, then all the techniques should have a use.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to get at, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. What did I write down the other day that I was just, jotting down in my notes? Something like, I said I was just jotting down notes, I put down something like the physicality of a technique transcends style. Techniques must have logic to them. But how do we define logic? And then I put martial science. And I guess what I was, honestly, that's just a bullshit note I wrote. But I guess what I was trying to say is, you've got to have a scientific principle as the basis for what you do. And it just so happens that we look at speed being absolute, because power is relative.
So if you're a coach in an athletics club and you're looking for the fastest runner, sprinter, and you want to make him faster, what are you going to do? Are you just going to make up moves, or are you going to try to find and define the fastest possible way you can make that person move, by the position he starts from, by the position he accelerates from, and by the position he maintains, and by his breath and everything that comes with it. 9 seconds to run 100 meters, maybe less now, I guess. No breath, don't breathe, slows you down.
Right.
And it's that kind of mentality you've got to have. To get the best technique, or the best person, the best athlete. That's what you're looking for. And for us, we're looking for the best science, so that person, whoever they may be, if they're willing and if they're prepared to practice, and if they can be encouraged to become, to sustain that art and that science. Because that's what we need. We need a vessel, right, to be able to put this knowledge into, because we all grow old, we all grow slow, but the knowledge continues to accelerate.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's let's face it, old man, you're in the winter of your life now. No, I'm only kidding. No, but I know what you mean. It's
I've noticed it's been snowing a lot as well.
I was going to say that's your dandruff, but you've got no hair. Oh God, no. But honestly, this thirst for knowledge is something we encourage, and I think first of all, I think you want to kind of look inward towards the style instead of looking outward, which you think a lot of people do.
Yeah. Well, you only have to look at the nationals for that.
Yeah.
Everybody looking at nice, long wushu or tai chi sets in order to, define their abilities in front of people who have absolutely no idea of what they're doing and have to then judge the merits of their technique on what they see in a moment.
Yeah.
So yes, it's difficult, and I get it. I get that they want to win the competition by trying to make us, as a flowery and flamboyant set. But for me, as I've said before in the podcast, make the technique work and you'll win me over.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how ugly it is. Make it work.
Yeah.
Make it look right. Be perfect. I mean, I really, when you look at a karate competition, a tournament, and you see them doing their kata competition, and you see the taekwondo doing their, set competitions, they have to be precise because there's nothing to them. There's so little to do within those forms.
Yeah.
And they will argue, of course, that there's an awful lot to do. Well, yes, in comparison, but not in comparison to a more style in a similar way to Kung Fu, where the wrists have meaning, the fingers have meaning, and so on. So you have an awful lot more stuff. But, in terms of watching a competition from the point of view of, of karate or taekwondo, you see that they are absolutely crisp and precise because that's what they look to do. They really try to tighten it up, and that's why they're so good at doing competitions in unison when they do a form with other people all doing things at exactly the same time, exactly the same height, exactly the same speed. Everything is absolute spot on, and because they can.
Well,
right?
if you've ever watched those taekwondo breaking competitions where they're all, oh my God, it's incredible. Like the physicality of them, it's amazing. Yeah. No doubt. So exactly, I know what you mean. Yeah, I was talking about sort of, watching other people and yourselves, I suppose, doing forms, sets, kata patterns, whatever you want to say. I remember I was spying on a class once. It was what was it? Taekwondo class, and I was sat next to the guy, one of the parents of the people doing the class, and we just got chatting, and he turns around because we were watching them do their patterns, and he said, you know what? He said, when you see them, because we were mentioning, patterns, I think I said that, but he said, when you see people sparring, it looks nothing like the patterns. And I just think, yeah, you're right, mate. And then just put my head down because I thought, I'm not even going there with you, dude. But do you know what I mean? Like, it was like, bless them. But I don't blame him for lack of knowledge because, let's face it, bless him. But it was I just thought that's an interesting point from someone looking on the outside. But even I would wager the bet that, a correlation between movement made during what I saw in that class and fighting would be, seldom if ever done.
Well, you've got to at least be capable of fighting with the techniques you're training, right? They've got to look there, they've got to be there, and therefore that's why I say to you, when you practice a set enough, you should do it as if you were fighting.
Yeah.
And then of course we always come back to this argument, oh yeah, but which style is the best, and then people go to, oh, you know, boxing is better or UFC is better or whatever. It totally depends on what you're training for.
Yeah,
absolutely. If you're training for a professional competition fight or professional ring fight, then you're going to be, you know, qualified to do that. If you don't, you won't be qualified. If you're not training for that, then don't participate in a bloody ring fight, because you won't win. The reason you won't win is because you haven't trained for it. Okay, you're training basically because you want to be able to defend yourself. Now, when you have to defend yourself, it's against a sudden attack, it's against a bigger person, it's against a smaller person, it's against an armed person, and you are training for every event. You're not, you know, specializing your attack or your defense in any particular way because there are no rules. So you've got an awful lot more to think about and an awful lot more to practice, but the people who will attack you are not going to be skilled in that sense, because if they were skilled and disciplined, they wouldn't be attacking you in the first place. So it's very few, you know, good martial artists would ever consider being a complete lunatic and picking on someone. The person sitting in the bar, he's sitting in the corner of the room, quiet as a mouse, reading his paper. You pick on him, you don't know what capability he's got. Right? But the person who stands up, starts pushing people around and bullying people, you very quickly learn what he's got and what he hasn't got. And it's really funny to see the person who's standing bullying everyone goes over to the person reading his newspaper, and the person who doesn't want any trouble reading his newspaper will annihilate and completely destroy that individual, because he didn't know he could, right? That's the bully didn't know he could, and he wants to make it quick. He wants to make it as fast as he possibly can because he doesn't want to fight. But he may well have done an awful lot in his life that doesn't require him to get up and prove it. Right? I think once you've got experience, you don't need to get up and prove it.
No.
And I think a lot of people in, you know, these people talking about self-defense, oh yeah, but what if he was this massive, you know, big guy with loads and loads of experience? Well, if he was that, he should be ashamed of himself if he's picking on people, especially if he's big, because the majority of people are going to be smaller than him. So, you know, then he deserves a hammer on his head. Then he deserves a glass in his face. Because that's what you'll get if he's picking on people who are scared of him.
Oh,
it's a danger.
I freaking hate bullies. I always have. Going back to, I just want to just briefly touch on sort of the mentality of training. Okay, different aspects. Now, just before you mentioned like boxing, right? For example, you look at sort of boxing, right? You know, and basically, I remember I got approached by a guy a couple of years ago, by a friend of mine. I said, listen, and he said, my friend is going to take part in one of these white collar boxing tournaments, and he's got no one to train him. And anyway, my name was, you know, frittered to this guy. And I said, yeah, sure, I'd love to oblige. I'd love to help out. You know, just need some room, just some space, and all the rest of it. Anyway, met this guy, and, you know, he's my friend to this day. He's a lovely guy. And we began training. And the problem I quickly encountered was that this guy thought that I was teaching him Kung Fu, because he said, have you ever done boxing? I said, no. I said, I've just done Kung Fu. So right away, he had this impression of I didn't know how to teach boxing. Now, for me, fighting is fighting. Like, that is, you know, there's only so, if you eliminate the legs and you put forward parameters of a fight with rules, you know, there's only so many ways you can throw a punch, so many ways you can use a ring, you know, use your movement within that ring to achieve your objective, which is to win. Right? So it was like he was quite sort of perplexed that I would have the audacity to suggest that I could teach him boxing. And I thought it was really interesting because after he got to know me a couple of times, you know, obviously he must have thought what I was saying was making sense. And anyway, we had a bit of a issue with him going on YouTube and watching Manny Pacquiao's trainer and all the rest of it, and then doing different things to what I was telling him to do. Anyway, we ended up wasting a little bit of time, but when it came to the fight, he drew, you know, but I put him ahead by 1 point, and that wasn't being biased, it was just crap referees. But my point was this: it was like, it's funny how people assume that when you know, if you were to foray into the realm of boxing or, you know, whatever, that because I do, you know, Lau Gar Kung Fu, that I have no business doing it. And I'm like, not at all, not at all. I understand boxing probably better than boxing, you know? And I don't mean that in a cocky way, but because I'm aware,
I understand.
I'm aware if you know, when you add the legs into it, you know, and not only that, hey, if you want to do San Shao, you start grabbing legs and, you know, throwing them. Do you see what I mean? The scope of it increases.
If you decide to do a sport, then you chip away the, you know, the art, and you maintain a part of the art which is useful to you, but a lot of it will not be useful to you in that particular environment. But that's exactly the same as if you go into a street and you walk into a bar. You will use totally different tactics in that bar than you would use if you're still outside in the car park. Because it would call for a certain strategy. Yes. You know, you would use, you know, objects and objectives in a bar, you know, especially if you're fighting a much bigger person or whatever, where you can keep him away from you by moving around a table. Same apply, that applies, I guess, by moving around a car. But at the same time, there are many other aspects you can use in a bar that is different to what would be in the car park, and it includes light and dark. It includes, you know, where the light's coming from. It includes the objects that are available to you. It includes the space that you're available. It also, obviously, outside of the bar on a car park, would include the level of the ground and the makeup of the ground. Is the ground slippy? Is it grass? Is it gravel? There's all these different things that you can go to increase your chances of survival, and people don't get that, you know, because the gravel you can pick up and throw in his face for starters. You know, there's many things. You can even kick a puddle. You know? Well, you'd be surprised what you can
just
do.
watch a Jackie Chan film, you know. There's an example of used in your environment, you know.
But exactly.
No, I just think it's funny when, like, I think the one thing that Lau Gar and, you know, certainly you have always instilled in me is, you know, if you're going to foray into certain, you know, competitive fighting types, just know what you're doing, you know, whether it's boxing, semi-contact, full contact, whatever. Because you can't train in a way that you would, you know, train normally, if you like. You have to, like you said, chip away a few techniques here and there in compliance with the rule set. And I remember watching, here's a point for you. Remember that, you know, you've had a few ex-students who now sort of train Hung Gar. And their organisation in Hong Kong, you know, I remember watching one of their dinners on YouTube. Basically, you know, this guy's daughter was going to do an MMA fight. And the head of this Hung Gar style in Hong Kong gets up in front of everybody, all his students, and says, proudly announces, my daughter's going to do an MMA fight. We're really behind her. But what we're going to do is we're going to send her off to a Muay Thai gym to learn how to kick and punch. I'm like, hang on, you're a bloody master of Hung Gar, and you're sending her to a Muay Thai gym to learn how to kick and punch. What the hell's going on? Do you know what I mean? Like, does that make any sense to you?
Yeah. Well, even if you look at a boxer, and from fight to fight, he'll change his tactics too. So he has to train a few tactics, but he doesn't have to train a huge amount of tactics. He just has to have a good strategy. But he has to change that strategy and tactics for every fight he does, because he's fighting different people who may have different, you know, option. I mean, look at UFC. You know, you go, okay, I've got to fight this guy. Oh, he's a grappler. I better start thinking about what he's going to do to me if he favours grappling, and I end up stuck on the floor, and I'm a kicker and puncher. So what I've got to do is, you know, work a way around that, and then vice versa, of course. So, you know, everybody has to change their strategy, and you have to, if you're going to fight, you've got to train specifically for it. If you're going to fight with a fighter, then you've got to train an awful lot harder. So, you know, it isn't about who's best or what style is best. It's about who trains specifically for what they're going to do.
Right, yeah,
you know,
exactly.
Don't try to enter a ring if just because you think your style's good. If you enter a ring, you must enter the ring knowing you can, you know, succeed. But if you don't train, there's no way you can succeed.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, absolutely, you know. But it's just the interpretation of what we do. It's mad, you know. But listen, I want to talk about. That was quite interesting. I enjoyed that. I want to talk about
some philosophy there, eh? Some philosophy.
Master Poe. Right. I want to talk about the fighting stance. Okay, and we'll just, you know, fighting stances generally, all right? Not necessarily the fighting stance in Lau. However, there are some points I want to just touch on with the fighting stance. When I see other people do it and whatnot, I just want to get your opinion on it. But fighting stances, what are they about? Why do we have them? That's your cue, by the way.
Yeah, I was going to say, you've got to have a basis to start from. You've got to have a base to fight from. You know, you've got to have a position of you know, start, and an objective to defend. So, you know, if it isn't a strong position to defend, and it's not a strong position to attack from, then you're going to find yourself overwhelmed or underwhelmed if you're attacking. You know, because you'll be underwhelming to them. So, you know, that's why we have a fighting stance. But, you know, that's the fighting position during a fight. But before a fight, if you portray a fighting position, you know, to a person who may not even appear prepared to fight you, just arguing with you or being angry, and you then apply a fighting position or you know, drop into a pose of fighting position, straight away you're you know, making it worse situation. You're
showing your intentions.
Well, you're raising the stakes a little bit, aren't you? Yeah, showing your intentions, and then what is he going to do? He's going to go, oh, you want to fight, do you? Okay. And of course, you don't know what he's like. You don't know how good he is. You don't know, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So, you know, the fighting stance should only be done, I mean, the actual fighting stance, is if we're literally in a fight, so the person actually goes to grab you, goes to punch you, goes to whatever. I mean, obviously, the position you're standing in the first place should be in an ideal situation, not too close. You know, a good arm's length and more away, giving you time to think, giving you time to respond. But most importantly, of course, the fighting stance is develops into like your defense and attack situation. As he goes for you, you know, straight away your first hand out there is your defense. The second hand is the counter. The first hand who defends can lock, can throw, can poke, can literally attack, counter attack, you know, or preemptive strike, if you want to call it that. You know, in other words, you're striking him before he even gets to hit you, because he may just try to grab you. So on. There's all sorts of things you can do from a fighting position if we're talking about the basic fighting stance, and that stance is just purely as a response to an attack, not preempting an attack.
Yeah, right, yeah. So let me ask you a question then, and again, devil's advocate. Why are there so many different versions of fighting stances? What's that about? For example, in boxing, you know, you've got your hands generally up. In you know, other styles, you know, presented out forward and etc.
Or in a boxing match, you're already in a fight, and you know exactly where he's going to try and hit you. So you're going to put your hands accordingly, and you're going to put your stance accordingly, because you can't use your legs. You're going to have to use your stance to move. So, you know, shuffles, and, you know, invariably shuffles rather than steps. You know, it's not a good idea to step. It takes too long, and you're crossing over yourself. You're going too far forward. You shouldn't be that far away from the target in the first place. And obviously get your arms up. You've got big gloves on. You're going to protect your head, and your elbows are in to protect your ribs, and so on. And you're tucked underneath. You're tucked down, so your head is actually closer because you're tucked down. And if you roll your hips forward, then you can sort of alleviate that a little bit. But what you're trying to do is to cover as much of your body as you can with your arms and your elbows and so on. So
is there such a thing as a perfect fighting stance then?
No, I wouldn't say so. I mean, if you are going, if once you're in a fight, you're going to a fighting stance, if you put yourself with your hands obviously in front of you, with it up, low, out, out like a Thai boxer, in like a boxer, sort of half and half with a martial arts person, you're going to find that those hands have got to move. And often you'll find, and I call it an attitude hand, often you'll find that people will have their one hand out, sort of covering themselves, and the hand that is lower and further back tends to be forgotten, especially when they're training in a club. The bottom hand tends to be forgotten. Well, that's what the target hand is. The obviously your adversary can know, he can judge whether you're thinking about what you're doing with each hand. If the one hand is lively, he's going to be wary of it. If the other hand is kind of forgotten, and the wrist is bent and the fingers are all curled up and you've completely forgotten about it, that's his target.
Yeah.
That's where he's going to kick that if he can, because it's going to hurt you, because you ain't going to move it, because you weren't even aware of it yourself.
Do you know the best thing that you said, I quote it all the time, is you only know you're covered when you know you're open.
Yeah, that's lovely. I love that saying. I was just going to say it then, but I thought I knew you would come out with that.
Oh, you know it.
Yeah.
But explain that. What does that mean? What's the
well, you're only covered when you know you're open. Just simply means that exactly that. You know you're open, so you protect that area, and once you protect it, you're covered. So,
but you're open somewhere else, though.
That's right. That's why you have to keep moving your body. That's why you have to keep moving your arms. If you don't move, the other person knows you're open in one place or another. But you can never be completely covered.
Yes.
Especially if you're taking your hands out, as we do. Yeah. I mean, even a boxer's not completely covered. He is in a boxing match
not
as much as he
you're
can.
Kicking.
Exactly. Not in a real situation, he's not. So the boxer might put his hands up as he would in a boxing ring and be able to reach a beautiful jab, nice and long. But if you're the same height as him, your leg's going to be longer, and the target's going to be closer because it's going to be his knee. So, I mean, I've watched boxers, professional boxers, take on just the same as one of those stupid kind of contests where one kind of martial art or one kind of fighter takes on another fighter, and this boxer, believing him to be a professional boxer, quite a well-known name actually, I can't remember it, I'm sorry, but he stands up to this guy who does some karate, some like full contact, and guess what happens? He's just getting kicked in the leg every 5 seconds, and eventually he sits on the ropes and says, "I'm not doing this." He just refused to get out again.
Yeah.
Because he just could not defend his legs at all. Now he might be the great puncher. He might be, if he hit you, he'd probably kill you. But the problem he's got is he's got to get there first.
Yeah.
And the other guy, because he's a kickboxer, he's trained same kind of stamina, I mean even less stamina. He's still got the capability of fighting. He's certainly got the willpower. No one's going to stand against a professional boxer if they haven't got the will to do it, and the capability. So he stood there and he just kept kicking his leg, and you could watch his leg collapse every time, and he kept on pulling it back and rubbing it because he kept getting kicked and hurt. It was hurting him.
Are you not thinking of that Muhammad Ali when he fought that wrestler guy, that Japanese wrestler?
No, it wasn't.
No. Have you ever seen that? When Ali, it's one of them exhibition fights, taking the piss sort of thing, but it was the funniest thing I've ever seen, Ali dancing around, and this guy just thought, I can't get close to Ali, so I'll just lie on the floor and let him come to me. It was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. It's funny if you find it. Talking about the fighting stance is we've discussed that a fighting stance generally will apply once you're in the fight.
Fluidity,
yeah. But I just want to talk a bit about why we have the fighting stance we do in Lau and what's the reasons for it. For example, it's very much, you're covering the centre. One hand is slightly forward than the other, but you're not trapping your hand, so to speak. And go on. Yep.
I was going to say, well, people will say, obviously, even with a kung fu fighting stance, you do low kicks, so consequently, you're going to be open. Well, of course you are. And that's why you keep moving, because you don't want him to set you up. You don't want him to. That's why in a competition fight, once you're in the fight, they're dancing. the reason they're dancing is because they don't want you to know they're going to suddenly move. So that sudden move is amongst a multitude of other moves. So it's disguised, right? What they've got to try and do is close that gap without you noticing they're closing that gap. And that could be feiting, that could be moving their legs slowly forwards as they're bouncing without you realizing it, because they're trying to, draw your attention to their arms, which you keep moving, so that in a fighting stance, that's how people will apply and protect themselves from a sudden attack. In terms of real or traditional fighting, if you like, yes, you can be kicked to the leg, so you've got to make sure that you're prepared to lift that leg. So you've got to have the right posture to have the right center of balance, so that you've got the right amount of weight on each leg, so you can move that leg.
Yeah.
Someone tries to kick your leg, you move the leg, you lift the leg, you can actually attack with the leg. Someone does a turning kick, you throw your knee sideways into that leg as it's coming round, so your knee will protect you and attack at the same time.
Yeah.
And they do that with, I guess, Thai boxing, maybe kickboxing, they do that, but that's basically the same principle. And as far as the arms are concerned, no, you can't protect your shins with your arms. And then of course you can get kicked to the groin. Well, part of the position, if you rotate your hips forward so that you're in a straight posture, someone does try to kick you to the groin, at least through the groin. We've done this in demonstrations and so on. Someone kicks you to the groin, you roll your hips, your ass is lower than your scrotum. Yeah. So you get your ass, kicked, but it doesn't hurt. And it doesn't take you down. Yeah. So that is one way. The posture itself is one way to ensure, afford a little bit more protection. It's not going to give you total protection. It's only going to give you protection against things that you can see coming. Yeah. If you know he's trying to kick you in the groin and you can move over that leg without even blocking it, and you can protect it because you have a skill in that way by rotating your hips, etc., having a good posture. All you have to do then is twist, and you've broken his leg. Because you're going to dislocate his knee. That's all you got to do is turn to the left, turn to the right, and you haven't even got to throw a punch. You've dislocated his knee. So it's the skills you learn in learning to fight.
Yeah, I loved it when we were doing Sticking Hands and you watched the video of me doing like low kicks to you, and your legs are just 1 minute they're there, the next minute they're not. Because you're going into cross steps and stuff like that, and where was a target now is no more, and it's just like, what the hell, and it's fantastic. You
got to feel what's happening, haven't you? Yeah. And then of course people do high kicks, and you just put your elbow in the way. Yeah. They don't want to do a high kick again, because an elbow on a shin is pretty painful. Yeah. And of course you want to keep your elbows in when you're doing sticky hands, and someone's trying to kick. And of course you can do that when they're punching low as well. You drop your elbow onto their forearm, and it kind of slows them. Remember, they're faster than you, and you've got to slow them down. And that's how you do it.
I would expand on what you just said then, but I'm not. I'm just going to draw it back to the fighting stance. Explain to me the position of the thumb in Lau Gar. Like we have always, there's a saying, isn't there? Lau Gar, you tuck your thumb in. Tai Chi, it's kind of the thumb is out. Do you have you heard that before?
Well, probably, I don't know. Yeah. But the difference, I think the difference is experience, because you'll find a lot of people have their hands relaxed, their arms will be out. Now, there's an important. Now, of course, when you're training at the first time, you will be taught to have your hand like a willow leaf, straight, and the thumb is up against it sideways. Yeah. So, and it's firm, and you look like a mannequin with your fingers sticking dead straight. Well, of course, that's to discipline you to remember that where your hands are. Okay, and often you'll find that their little finger will start to sort of separate from the other fingers, because they're not used to, they've got no strength in the little finger, they don't use it for anything, so it tends to be forgotten. So particularly again when you're using the sword as an example, that left hand is
sorry, I cut my finger the other day. Go on.
Using that sword is extremely important. The left hand is extremely important. So what you do when people are training the sword and they can't keep their little finger or their thumb right, then you put a piece of elastic band around it or tape their hand up, and then they can't make the mistake, and they remember it all the time. So you do that the same with a beginner who can't keep his hands correct. then you put a piece of elastic band around his fingers, and that's it. So he'll always try to remember that.
Yeah.
But as they get more experienced, you will see that their thumbs will start to relax, simply because they're ready to make a fist.
Yeah.
And the thumb is far more prepared when it's out there than if your hand was stiff. Because remember, if you've got anything, if your legs are stiff, your arms are stiff, your hands are stiff, you first have to release them. You have to release energy before you can use energy.
Yeah, sure.
You know, and that's the problem with people with going back to number one hand block, for instance.
Yeah.
People do number one hand block and they stand there with their hands by their waist, waiting for the person to come in a dead straight stance with their feet shoulder width apart,
So much
waiting for that punch.
Yeah.
And then what do? Because they're straight, first either they have to lean forward in order to take their leg back, or they have to bend their knees in order to take their leg back, or they try to fall back up with their head and expose their groin as they try to step back. So the three different things. What you really need to be doing, of course, is in a completely relaxed state, and that's with your legs just being relaxed, so you can kick off your left heel and push your leg back, your right leg back.
Yeah. Oh, for real. This is one for the instructors out there as well. If you when you're calling the walks in your class, or basic walk, punch, whatever, kicks, whatever, just every so often have a look and just look at everybody's hand position and see what their fingers are doing and where their hands are in relation if they're performing a fighting stance. Because you see so many people, and I know because it happens with my guys, I'm constantly reminding them. You see these fingers slowly creep down, and because people are so they're concentrating so much on either the next kick that they're going to do in the walk, in the line work, for example, or the next punch they're going to do, or what they're going to do. They suddenly forget that they've got these fingers out, and they start curling in and clawing in, and that tells me, as an instructor, I'm watching them. It tells me you have no sense of your physicality. To do with your hands, because remember, you should be focused on what's happening with your whole body. Be very wary of that.
When I teach, kicks, Lin Tak Fa, the walking kicks, if you like, I try to limit them to 3 if I can, and then turn, because the turn is more important. Or we turn to the right, or we turn to the left and do
90
whatever
degree turns.
You can have a much smaller room that way. There's not so many people in a class now, so a smaller room is good. So and the same with the walks. Turn them to 90 degree angles, turn them completely round 180 degrees. But when they're training their legs, their emphasis is on their hands. And they can forget their legs. They just throw out the leg. And then when they're training their hands, the emphasis is on their stance, their feet, their legs. And that's really important. And when they've got mirrors, often you get a hall with mirrors. As they're walking towards the mirrors, they're concentrating on one thing. Turn, think about it without the mirrors. Turn, now concentrate on the other thing, and they'll see the difference. And then when they turn, they'll have the whole thing put together. So it's great having mirrors. Mirrors are lovely.
It's really good. Absolutely great having mirrors. I mean, also you can sort of train opposite people and watch them as well, and
you can teach from the back and still see the front. Because often people who need help are usually at the back because they've got no confidence.
Oh, they're always at the back, aren't they? That's why I get everyone lined up and then I switch the direction. But seriously though, if you're everybody out there, beginners and whatnot, just look at the state of your fingers when you're doing a fighting stance. Just be aware. Be aware. It's one of these elements just to be aware of. I just thought I'd mention
cut your nails.
Yeah, that's it.
Cut your nails. Cut your toenails. Wear bare feet.
No, don't wear bare feet. You gotta, no, wear your communist footwear. Feiyu shoes. I love them. I tell you, as communist footwear goes, it's the best communist footwear. Now, if you're gonna get Feiyus, because they make you know what I'm talking about, Steve. Feiyu trainers. They're the ones endorsed by the Shaolin monks. The people with no possessions.
Make money off the shoes.
That's it. When they're not making money off the shoes, they'll advertise laptops and stuff. But if you can get they actually licensed for production Feiyu shoes in America, and obviously they make them in China and Europe and America. get the American ones, and I think, I'm not sure, is it a red circle on the sole or something, or I can't remember what it is, but you have to do.
Well, that ain't going to last long, is it?
No, but the American-made ones are better than the Chinese-made ones. The soles seem to last longer, I find, anyway. But communist footwear.
Well, we were talking about those the other day, weren't we? About the podcast 15 about where you end up with the underwear following you, because it's compressed underwear. Yeah, I told you I got a pair of them, didn't I? I went to communist China when I was 16.
Yes,
in 1974.
Because
75.
we just heard it on the podcast.
Yeah. Well, I didn't. I forgot to tell you actually. Which bloody escaped me now. But as well as buying those shoes, what else did I do?
Got an air rifle.
You
got a Bruce Lee T-shirt.
No, it was something about shoes, and I've completely forgotten now. God damn.
But this is how you know you're not making things up, when you start repeating yourself, Mr. Newbie.
Oh, they know that it's they know it's not what's it called? Rehearsed. What's that dirty word again? Rehearsed.
Rehearsal.
Well, if I remember, I'll come back to it.
Yeah.
But go on.
Right, I want to talk about, because we finished the last podcast and we did our series on talking about all the empty hand sets, pretty much leading up to Black Sash. What I want to do is I want to just talk about the knife defense, because I want to kind of go, and again, it's going to be a generalized talk in general about knife defense and what we're doing, what we're trying to achieve, as opposed to individual techniques. Of course, we have to start from a sort of a base, and generally in Lau we have the knife defense, a series of scenarios, 6 scenarios that we'll do. But I think in general, let's try and keep it as a generalization of techniques rather than the individuals. Go for it, Mr. Newbie. What do you want to say?
Well, yes, you've already said, haven't you, that there are 6 scenarios, and these scenarios will differ because they have a completely different approach, because there are different weaponries being used there, or a choice of weaponry being used. The hacking down can be, it traditionally would be like a Chinese knife, like a cooking knife, like a big
like a cleaver,
hatchet, like a cleaver. That's the word, But I want to really generalize about doing knife defense as a practice anyway, because the majority of videos and YouTube things you see out there are people dissing it. They're saying you can't defend yourself against a knife, and invariably they're right to a point. That is to say that just like you can't go into a UFC ring without training, you can't go into a knife fight without training. So you've got to have a certain mentality, but you may not have time in that situation to be able to see anything coming. So it is about the training, and for that reason you've got to rehearse that, and that's what training is. Constant rehearsal. Luckily for you, nowadays you use a rubber knife mostly. Earlier, before rubber knives became popular, they were wooden knives, and you still got hurt with them. And before that, we used real knives. And in my grading, 3 of us took the grading. One of them cut his hand open as he tried to block upwards. And he failed his grading because he had his hand cut open. In a grading, in a course, 60 people took part in the course. 3 people went to hospital because knife defense, because they were real knives, and you had 3 people facing you. One of them had a knife, but you didn't know which one. Good luck. Right. That was the training. Now some of them got really nasty gouges in their hands. But these are people trying to be careful with those knives. Right. Never mind someone actually trying to stab you. So if you are going to go on the journey, shall we say, and it is a long journey of training to defend against a knife, you've got to be serious about it. And in addition to the knife, you've got to recognize there are certain things that will assist you, not just technique, but common sense, like try to wrap something around your arm if you're trying to fend off a knife. Try
thickness of your clothing or whatever.
Yeah, thickness of your clothing makes a difference. The position you're in, the weaponry you can pick up, the light that you can pick up. If you've got a torch, it can help. There's all sorts of things, and they can use as weaponry. The longer and bigger, the better. But that's one way of looking at it. Then, before I even go on about the syllabus, the other thing that I've always agreed on, and we always have this argument with students when we do a knife defense course, because I always say, unless you're willing to practice these things, they're not going to work. Nothing's going to work if you don't practice it, as you know. But with knife defense, even more so, right? Because it ain't going to be a rubber knife. It's going to be a real knife, and it might be quite a long knife, but it might be a little knife, and it might be a knife you've never even seen. So your attitude has got to be right. But this one thing they always argue with people. I say, okay, where's the best place for you to be if you're confronted with a knife? And they go, well, they ain't got a clue. Obviously, the best place, if you can run, is to run, of course, to get out of the way. But if you can't go anywhere and you're cornered and there's one person with a knife, only one, remember, for this particular scenario, and I'm going to suggest that you just drop to the floor, lie on the floor.
See, we've got the whole of our audience going, you freaking idiot.
Exactly.
So go on,
and so,
go on, old man noobs, make the case.
So now I have to justify my actions.
Yeah.
So you're a woman, you're confronted by a man threatening you with a knife, you have nowhere to run. What are you going to do? You're going to give up on him. Okay, fine. You can give him whatever you've got to give him. You may not want to do that. But before that option arises, you get on the floor. When you're on the floor, what's the most protected part of your body? That's your feet. How the hell is he going to get down there unless he dives on you? People will say, oh, you'll throw the knife at you. Well, if he throws the knife, and that's one stab, right? And he hasn't got the knife anymore. So that's a better chance than standing there and getting multiple stab wounds, right? Next, you're on the floor. You got your arms to maneuver yourself around. You move around, keep yourself up, screaming and shouting as loud as you can, shouting fire, fire. Don't shout rape, because no one will come. And if you shout and kick out at his legs with the only thing that's protected, that is your shoes, protecting your feet, at his lower legs, at his knees, he's not going to get any closer than that, but he's going to get injured, right? So your objective is to take the attack to him, and that is to lie on the floor, rotate round using your arms and your legs, and using one leg, each leg in turn, to kick out at his legs if he's that close. If he's not that close, he ain't going to stab you. So that's the only way you are going to have a chance of survival, by fighting back.
That's right? A very interesting hypothesis, huh?
Yeah.
It's but it's, when you think about, yes, the most protected part of your body would be a shoe, because what do most people if you're cutting meat at the butcher's, you're going to wear a chainmail glove, but and you haven't got that protection on your hands, but your foot's solid, if you're wearing boots or whatever, Imagine if you're wearing stiletto heels. Imagine if you're wearing stiletto heels.
Well, you may break the heel, but the most important thing is that you are, kicking it, break it on them, kicking the shins, kicking at the lower, just below the knee, kicking at the knee, kicking at the side of the knee, stamping out as hard as you can, as fast as you can, and screaming as loud as you can. And I tell you what, you'll scare the crap out of him, right? Because it is so unusual for him to see that. And the only way you've got to go, and that's the only way I would suggest to people who cannot do a knife defense for their life to do. Alternatively, if you got the opportunity to pick up a chair, if you got the opportunity to pick up a big stick or pull out your gun, then that's fine.
It's when you I remember training that in the class with you when we were doing a knife defense course, weren't we? And it's a really interesting dynamic, people. All right, you know, one of you has a knife, the other person's on the floor, and that person with the rubber knife, you know, just play it as a game, whatever, you know, has to try and stab you. And how many times is he going to scab you before you kick him in the leg, kick him in the kneecap, or you could even take down with the legs, etc. You know. I mean,
well, then it becomes a floor fight, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to...
the option's there, though.
Yeah, but if you do a floor fight, he's still got the knife.
But then you can get up while he's on the floor or falling down and run.
Yeah, there's the point. Yes, you get up and run. Yes, if you can get him down, that's fine. But as long as he can't sort of crawl towards you, because once he's down at your level, you've no longer got the protection you had in the first place. The only way he can actually get you is to get down on your level. So by pushing him down, you're encouraging him to get down on your level. So what I'm suggesting is that you kick his shins, keep him away from you, right? And hopefully it's the screams and the shouts that are going to be more, you know, more problematic for him than actually the kicks, because he's going to think someone's going to come any minute. So he's going to go and pick on someone a bit easier.
Yeah, put it
so
like this. That's
that's self-defense basically. So
it's survival, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, you know, just you can do it as an exercise, train it in your class, see what you think of that. But ultimately, like you said, if you're not skilled in knife defense, what can you do? Well, Jesus, everyone can do that. You know. Yeah. So you know, have a play with it. It's an interesting dynamic, guys. Not saying it's, you know, the be all and end all, but just try it.
No, nothing's the be all and end all. You know, we can't. No one can say that you can survive. You know, 100%. No. It's just it's your only option. Yeah. You know, it's like standing on the side of a cliff and you're going, okay, what can I do? The guy's coming at me with a knife. Well, you're going to have to jump. If there's water at the bottom, you got a chance of survival. Yeah. If there ain't, what are you going to do? Yeah. You know, it's about survival. So you have to decide on whether you're going to make that decision.
When we look at the syllabus knife defense, let's just let's go into talking a bit about the syllabus and why it is. And you mentioned it's different attacks with different weapons, whether it's, you know, short stabbing blades or hacking blades. Why?
It's different examples.
Yes, different examples of it. The what are the biggest mistakes?
Are you eating again, James?
No, I swear to God,
You keep eating in this. Because you're not closing your mouth when I can hear you chomping away.
I'm talking. Well, I can't talk and not. All right.
You can't talk and eat.
I'm a heathen, you know. I'm a caveman. What can I say?
I'm only saying that because I'm starving.
Sorry, it's not. It's because you've got your headphones on and you can hear it.
I can hear. Yeah, that's right. I can.
Sorry, I beg your pardon.
Sorry.
Going back to
the knife defense. Can I just butt in there?
Yeah, go for it.
Because I did say there was another dynamic as well before we talk about the syllabus.
Sorry.
And no, there's no problem. I just thought, you know, there is a situation if you are a person with the means to fight and you are accosted by someone who may well be armed, and the point I want to make is attitude. It's about attitude. It's about, you know, fightability, if you want, I like to call it, whether that's a word. And that just simply means that if someone is confronting you and you can't see their hands, that's when they should be dead. That's when you should be hitting them, not waiting for them to pull out the knife, not waiting for them to produce anything. Just if he puts his hand in his pocket, if he's got his hand in his pocket anyway, you're going to punch him straight in the eye or the throat. You're going to kick him straight in the nuts, because you are not going to stand for that guy trying to pull out a weapon. You know, and if you can visualize any weaponry around you at the time you do that, then you go straight for that weaponry, whether it be a brick, whether it be a big stick or a chair or water or hot coffee, you know, anything. It's a beautiful weapon, hot coffee.
That's the best. Did I tell you about the time when I was in McDonald's and there was a chav outside kicking off? Yeah. I was going to. I tell you what, it wasn't hot coffee, but because I had a can of I had a thing of Pepsi at the time, no Coke. Anyway, I just finished my McDonald's meal and I still had half a cup left. I thought, for Christ's sake, got to go out now. This little chav's going to be kicking off because he's kicking off with everybody. So I took the lid off the top of me me Coke, because I thought, I tell you what, it'll be a laugh if I just launch this in his grid. if he tries anything. Anyway, sure enough, walked past him, everything was fine. But you know, you're just prepping. You're just prepping. Yeah. I've got a kind of paranoia when it comes to.
Well, you were in the army, James.
But that didn't make me paranoid. I think probably hanging around with you too much made me paranoid. Yeah. But you know, it's just about every little advantage you can have, whether it's launching a bloody Pepsi in their face. That's a distraction.
You hit it well. You're right on the head when you said prepping. It is about prepping. It is about carrying. You know, I mean, if you've got an old coat that you walk the dog in, keep some sand in it, keep some salt in it, keep some rock salt in it, keep some
bloody
gravel
pepper,
in it.
Bloody black pepper, you know.
Whatever. Whatever you have, always carry a torch, but invest in a bloody bright torch. You know, people often look at the army films, and they see, and this is the first thing you think, isn't it? Until you understand that they the SAS, they get into the room and they got their bloody big bright torches on the end of their guns, and you're thinking, well, they're a sitting target, because the guy's going to aim at the torch. But of course, if he looks at the torch, he's blind, because those torches are so powerful that you look there, you're blind, you can't see anything, and then you become confused, and the next thing you know, you're dead. So you've got to invest in a damn good torch. I got a lovely torch. I got a torch that's got like a indentation, like little sharp points all the way around the thing, so you can use it as a hammer and twist it like a tin opener. It's brilliant. You can open up this flesh with it. It's brilliant. Fantastic. And it's just a nice torch. It's not too bright though. I want to get a brighter one.
I tell you what, have you seen those knuckle dusters you can get, right? And they're kind of fabricated at home, and they're skirting the grey area of the law in the UK. So
I was just going to say, we're talking illegality now, aren't we?
Well, it's kind of skirting it, because you can buy them on eBay. But basically, they're like really big nuts, like nuts and bolts. But they're big, so you can fit your fingers through them, right? But they're all sort of pivoted one on top of the other. So as you fold them out, you can stick your 4 fingers through it. And it's in effect a knuckle duster. I'm like, how cool is that? That appeals to my sort of sensibilities. That
we have to point out at this point in time that we're not advocating people carry illegal weapons.
Oh no, not
Also, I have to say that the law in England is different to the law here, because you can have mace here, you can have bear spray here, and you need it because you can walk down the woods here, where I live, and you can be accosted by a bear, so or a cougar, or a lynx.
That sounds no different to a South London estate. Some of the animals around there.
You can be bitten by a snake. You can have all sorts in the summer, but honestly, as far as England's concerned, UK is concerned in general, you cannot carry anything for defence, because it can be used as offence. So that's why you can't have mace. That's why you can't carry pepper. If you have a pepper pot in your pocket and you get stopped, or scissors, they will want to know why you're carrying them. That's why you can't carry a knife. Whereas here, you can carry a gun on your shoulder as long as it's not loaded. You can carry a sword as long as people can see it. You can carry a knife as long as people can see it.
Do you know what? Do you know what I do? Because I've got a dog. You know those huge sort of dried bones you can get.
From carry one of them.
No, I have one of them in the side of my door in my car.
Like
that
a
way,
club.
If anyone questions anything, it's for the dog. And my dog is sort of medium sized. No way could she. But you can just, I tell you what, you pick that bone up, club. I tell you, that's going to hurt somebody. But anyway. But that's the accumulation. That's the accumulation of my kung fu training. Do you see?
And it's also the opening of 2001: Space Odyssey.
Are you saying that I look like a primate? I might act like it, but I'm certainly not. But no, it's funny. It's funny. It's hilarious.
But anyway, prepping is important. Going back to that, prepping is important. Always go out prepped. Always go out with the you know, I mean, I'm not trying to make people paranoid or anything, but you go out knowing that it can happen, then you'll be prepared. It's like going out and not taking a coat, knowing it's going to rain. You know, it's not a good idea.
Yeah.
So,
no, that's you know. But isn't it interesting? Now we're talking about knife defense, but you would think it's a purely physical thing. But we're talking about the psychology, about you know weather conditions. You know,
most people will freeze. Yeah, when they come in front, a knife is shown at them, and the reason people show knives at you is because they're trying to threaten you. It's not necessarily they're going to use that knife. They only want your money. So give them the money. Yeah. Give them your cards. Give them whatever, because that's why they're showing you the knife. But you know, it's down to your own abilities and your own choices. You make your own choices. You know, you can just say, okay, there you go. I can see you need a few quid. There's the money, right? That's it. But it's only if they get violent. And obviously, when you're talking about, you know, women and so on, then you're talking about, you know, obviously other, and it can happen to men as well. Of course, we can't be prejudiced here.
It happened to Mick Dundee.
Yeah.
That's not
rape.
A knife. This is a knife.
Right. I was talking about rape, James.
No, I don't. Oh, right. I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. That kind of makes me sound a bit of a twat because I didn't realise you had. I was talking about Crocodile Dundee. And you were talking about that. Oh, shit.
Yeah, I'm talking about, you know, it can happen to women and it can happen to men too. So we're not prejudiced.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, you've got to be wary, and then of course you've got to take into consideration numbers as well.
Yeah,
you've got to, you know, you've got to be, you know, you've got to be serious here. You can't be, you know, you've got to be logical. You've got to be, you know, sensible.
So what can we, when we're training the syllabus, how can we improve our understanding of the knife defense? I mean, I think we've maybe touched on that in terms of the psychology of it. But how can we improve what we're doing when we're training it in a class?
Be a good attacker.
Instead of just going through the motions.
Yeah, be a good attacker. A lot of people sort of attack and then stop, waiting for them to defend. No, stab.
Yeah. Just
stab at them. And it's a rubber knife, for God's sake, you're not going to hurt them. Stab them. If you stab them once, stab them again. Because they deserve it.
Yeah.
Right? And they've got to, you learn to move.
Yeah.
It's the move of the feet. It's the footwork at the beginning of any move. Get the footwork correct, because the footwork takes you out the line of the attack. Now remember, we're talking about very basic straight attacks, which are very rare. Long straight attacks are extremely rare in real life. It's far more likely they'll be a lot closer, which is why you don't let people get that close. It's far more likely the knife will be hidden, which is why you need to see their hands. It's far more likely that the person is, you know, is going to be angry, aggressive, whatever, because he's already hyped up, he's already scared.
So talking about, going back to the syllabus, if you like, I just want to hover around the syllabus for a bit.
I was talking about the syllabus.
I know, but there's a scope there to be sidetracked, you know.
Okay.
I've got go on.
No, see footwork. When we get out the line.
So you're talking about having a good attacker, right? So let's because during some of the knife defense scenarios, you're not just doing one attacking stab or slash, if you like, or whatever. There's multiple, right? So when you're doing multiple, if I'm looking at someone and they'll say, you know, step forward and stab, and then they'll freeze and wait for the person to do something, right? That's giving you a very false sense of it. As an attacker, you should be stabbing and then, you know, trying to bring your arm back or something. Just make it that bit difficult. You know, do you understand what I mean? Obviously, you've got to learn to move first, but try.
We got to make sure that beginners don't think they've got to, you know, try and like become bloody, like scream and slashing.
Yeah, no. I'm just talking about those people who've done the knife defense and want to sort of elevate the training a bit more, so to speak. You know, because you've got the confines of the syllabus. So, you know, it's like a chess game, isn't it? You can do anything you want on the chessboard except go off the chessboard. You know, so you've got to stay within the confines of what you're doing or the scenario. But listen, you know, up the ante, up the intensity, etc.
So what we did with our training, is so you get everybody obviously a certain grade when they learn the knife defense. They learn the knife defense through and through, thoroughly, attacking one person, whatever. Then what you do is you get a load of people in a circle, one person in the middle, and a knife. Okay, one person's got the knife. He knows for the first part. He knows who's got the knife. The knife man does the attack.
Yeah.
The defender defends. The knife goes flying off. Whoever can pick up that knife becomes the attacker.
Right.
And he just goes for it.
Yeah.
And they keep in order. They keep the numbers in order: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Keep it in order initially, and then they'll be able to help the defender to learn the process. But after that, once you get a little bit more skillful, you get the beginner, the experienced person in the middle, anybody around the edges. They attack. Knife goes flying across the room somewhere. Next person picks it up, just attacks with anything they can think of.
Yeah.
Within the confines of the syllabus.
Yeah.
And then after that, forget the syllabus. Right? And that is a great way to learn. And it's an exciting and fun way of learning knife defense.
Right.
Okay? And it certainly makes you wary of the knife. Now, if you could do that with a real one, that'd be great, but I think there'd be a lot of litigation and a lot of bandage required.
Yes, I would think so.
Unfortunately, it's a dangerous game, but try to make it as realistic as possible. Even with the rubber knife takes the psychology away, unfortunately, because you feel safe.
Yeah.
I think it wouldn't hurt to occasionally take out a real knife and see how people respond. Don't do the attack, of course. Just see how people would respond.
Yeah.
You know, see what happens to their faces.
Yeah.
When the instructor suddenly just goes, right, knife defense, and he drops the rubber knife and he says, okay, you're ready now, pulls out a real knife, and they all go, wait a minute. and that is where you realize how strongly psychology changes. Yeah. I'll give you an example of psychology. You've got the classes running around in a circle, and then around that circle there's two guys holding a quan, a stick.
Yeah.
And they hold it at waist level, quite low, or around, even just above the knee, lower their arms down straight.
Yeah. And
everyone runs around, they jump over the stick, right? Then you change that and you get them holding a sword.
Yes.
See what happens.
Yeah.
See what happens.
Yeah.
Everybody suddenly stops running and starts thinking about whether they should jump it or not,
yeah.
even though it's the same height.
Yeah.
That's psychology.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So,
absolutely. Yeah, that's great. Talking about... yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to sort of segue, but go on.
No, I was just going to say, I'm sorry, it sounds like our classes are crazy.
No. Oh, no.
We want people to learn, and we want people to do. We want people to be able to do.
Yeah.
Don't just go to your class and go through the motions.
Yeah.
Enjoy it. Yeah, make it a club. It's not a class, it's a club.
Oh, you need that family sort of bind, I think, with martial arts. You need that sort of that. Anyway, talking about the knife defense as well. Interestingly enough, it's probably, in fact, it's the first part in the syllabus, if you like, where we start doing some a bit of china, a bit of locks and holds, and all the rest of it, isn't it?
Yeah, if people haven't tried the sets and done those things, which they should have done, so they should be encouraged to do that prior. Yeah. But yes, as far as the syllabus is concerned, it's really probably the start of chinaya and locks and that sort of thing.
And it's a wonderfully expansive thing, china. I love it when we and I don't think it's not done enough in the class really. But certainly
knife defense isn't done enough in the class. You need like at least one night every. Yeah. Of course, you can't do this unless you've got more than one night a week. Yeah. But you should have at least a night every other week where you just do nothing but knife defense, and even that's not enough. Really, you need to do it 7 days a week.
Yeah.
But that's not possible. So do what you can.
Again, syllabus, and I want to be very general, and in as much as I'm going to basically say to you, and I don't want you to sort of labour the point, but in knife defense number 1, what's the most common mistake? Keep it simple. What's the most common mistake that you see people do?
footwork.
Okay. Knife defense number 2. What do you think? And you can say the same thing, obviously, but this one's an interesting one because
Kicking too high.
kicking too high. Yes, right. Okay. And do you?
People say, "Oh, you should kick. You know, shouldn't be lazy kicking low." But there's no such thing as lazy when you're being attacked by a knife.
Yeah.
Kick on the inside of the knee if you can. Buckle the leg if you can. Get him to the ground and run.
Yeah. Is it in the syllabus that you kick to the head in that one? Is it in the syllabus that you kick to the head? Right. Okay.
Yeah. Well, the reason being is as the guy swings the knife up and then swings it down, well, invariably,
He's
an
taking his head
attacker.
down.
Yeah, invariably an attacker stops at that point and waits for you to do the defense. He stops the hand halfway through. Well, he shouldn't do that. He should be swinging the knife up, trying to cut through you. And remember, it's a rubber knife, so try and make a big black mark on their tunic and just slice that knife right up their tunic. They'll move out the way and then try and stab it down the side of their neck and just really try to reach for it. And if you really reach for it, that arm will swing right behind you, and as you swing that arm behind you, that's when your head goes down, and that's why it's a kick to the head, because your head's supposed to go down, right? But invariably people don't do that, so just kick to the knee.
So this is probably the kick to the head in Lau Gar syllabus, whether it's kick defense number 4 or this knife defense number 2. People misinterpret it, don't they? Because they think, oh, we've got to kick to the head. No, take the head to
the foot. Yes,
not the foot.
Bring the
to
head
the
to
head.
the foot.
Anyway, listen, we can knife defense number 3, the overhand stab, most common.
Yeah. Most common is people don't slice the knife up through the middle first. They try to bring it around the top. In other words, they're not defending themselves with the knife, because you're learning martial arts. So you should be bringing it up through the center to stab down. So you're trying to stab on top of the head. You're trying to poke them through the head, really. Yeah. And so as you bring it up, and the biggest mistake is, of course, you should attack. The defender should counter as the knife is still on its way up.
Yes.
Should move in. Yeah. So then when the knife comes down, the arm is real close to it.
Yeah.
And you're trying to block with your wrist, not with the under part of your wrist. You're blocking with your bent wrist, the top of your wrist where it bends.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not underneath where all the veins are. Because if you try to block that strike and you lift your arm upside down to try to block it, and the knife slides down, it will cut every vein and sinew in your arm, in your hand, your wrist, and of course you'll bleed all over the place. So you need, you're going to bleed a lot less if it catches the top of your arm. Yeah. Okay. And of course then you can grab as well from there.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Just another point on number 3. Is this one of those knife defenses where we're using a cleaver, so to speak?
It would be traditionally it would have been a cleaver.
Okay. Right, number 4. Knife defense.
Yeah.
Common mistake.
I don't know.
Okay.
Describe that one. I'm thinking of number. I'm going straight into number. You're passing it, aren't you?
You're passing it. You're grabbing.
You're picking
it
up and passing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the one. I'm already set because of the other 2, 5 and 6. I'm already set to explain them.
Oh, okay.
And that went out my mind. Sorry. So yes, you're grabbing it from the ground because you're already on the ground. So you're just picking it up and passing it to your other hand and quickly stab them. Okay. It's footwork again. People don't move their foot in time. They try to avoid without moving their footwork. It's going to be very difficult. Yeah. And of course you're slapping, and then they have their right hand out. Yeah. So instead of slapping and keeping their right hand inside that slap, and so they can then grab naturally.
Yeah. Stop rustling, old man. You're rustling. You're doing it again, aren't you?
I'm doing the technique.
You've got Tourette's.
I'm doing the technique and I'm catching me mic as I do it.
Yeah.
So your left hand is slapping, your right hand slides up and grabs naturally, like grabbing a branch, grabbing the hand. The other hand then can go out and hit with the wrist or the back of the hand. Yep. And then remember to twist the hand as you roll, throw it up. and stepping through. It is quite a complicated one, but it does work.
Yeah, it does. There's a couple of points that you can sort of do to increase the effectiveness of the arm lock at the end. But there's one point I just want to ask you about.
Gripping the elbow.
No, well, you can grip the elbow. Yeah, that's
what they do with the thumb. They grab.
Yeah, they just go
to help bend it. I don't agree.
No.
Okay. Go on.
It does hurt though if you grip.
Yeah. If you grip it and then you can bend the arm, right?
Yeah.
And that's fine. That's what the syllabus says. So, but remember, we're talking about scenarios here, and we're talking about a vehicle for learning. We're not necessarily talking about do it exactly like this because it will work like this. Yes, it will, but there are lots of ways you can play with this. Remember. Yeah. So yes, as you raise that hand. There are loads of, and this one is really interesting because I like number 4 because once, okay, let's.
You couldn't remember it 2 minutes ago.
I know. No, I was set to talk. Sorry, I'd lost where we were, and I'd set myself talking about number 5. Yeah.
Go on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. We jest.
Yeah,
okay, so how many times can you actually dislodge that knife from somebody? That's how you got to count it. It's really good. So they stab out, you slap the hand, the arm can be dislodged, the knife can be dislodged by slapping the arm. Okay, next, as you grab it, throw it up in the air. I mean, really throw it and twist it with your hand as you throw it up in the air as you go through the hand, and you could dislodge it then. And that's why I say don't grab hold of it, because yes, it's correct to grab hold of it, but if you throw it right up in the air and then run through, and you can lose the knife there, but then when you pull it back down, you can stab him with the knife if it's still in its hand. But if not, just throw the arm really hard backwards. Not in training, of course, because you'll dislocate his shoulder. Okay, that's my disclaimer, and I'm sticking to it. So obviously, you would raise the arm. It's already twisted. You pull it down, throw it at him, so it stabs him. So he will naturally try to avoid it. If he doesn't avoid it, he gets stabbed. It's no problem. It's in his hand. It's his fault. Okay, bring it round, up, behind him, and you could still lose a knife there. So count how many times the knife falls out of his hand by doing it carefully. You know, and it's a really good measure that is. And there's one more bit there, because you do obviously put your hand on the elbow at some point, whether you do it at the first part or at the end. The biggest mistake people make is they try to adjust their right hand to try to bend the wrist, right? It's not about the wrist, it's about the shoulder, right? You're dislocating the shoulder and you're using the lower forearm, the whole forearm from the elbow downwards as a lever. Don't pull it towards you and stab yourself with this bloody knife.
What you're talking about, it's hard to explain, is what we call a universal joint. So if you it's exactly the same principle as on knife block number 3, when that arm has got 90-degree bend at the elbow and it's 90-degree from the shoulder. When you torque that arm back on number 3 knife defense, it's because it's a universal joint. You will eventually get to a point where you're popping the shoulder out, and it's the same at the back as well. If you pull that arm back, you can pop it out. Sorry,
go on. I was just going to say there's a trick as far as that when that arm is behind his back, and that is, you know, keep yourself by the side of his arm, the arm that you've got control of, push him away, but just hold on to his arm.
So you're creating a gap between your arm and the back of the person. If
his arm and the back of the person,
if the attacker's arm is touching their back at this point, you think about how easy it is for you to spin out and release from it. But if your arm there's a considerable gap of 6 inches or so, it's very, very uncomfortable.
Plus the fact, of course, you hold on to the arm, so it automatically dislocates because it's overextending. But whatever you do, you know, because what people do is they hold it and then pull it towards them and stab themselves with that knife. And what I'm suggesting is keep your right arm straight. So when you push them from one side, keep your arm straight to keep the knife away from you. Their arm will still dislocate if you're pushing them away from you. So you know, it's good.
Can I just ask, for all those eagle-eyed second set practitioners here, in the second set we've got that bounce with the wrist. Can you interpret the strike in number 4 knife defense as that wrist bounce. We're using it as a strike to the side of the face, so to speak.
Yeah, it can be the wrist. It can be the wrist. And
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It is. It's a good position to explain that wrist technique, actually, because you are literally hitting with the wrist. You never hit with the top of the hand. You never hit with the fingers.
Hang on. You
Sorry.
now.
Now I'll put my hand across. Again, I'm doing the techniques. Jeez. By the end of these podcasts, I'm sweating, James.
Thank God Jackie's not next to you, lying on the bed. You'd be black and blue.
Yeah, I just talking to you on the phone, wasn't I? And she just happened to walk in the kitchen as we were talking, and you were talking about some technique or something. So I just pulled her to me, which is very, I have to say, that's very rare. And I grabbed hold of her arm and demonstrated with her arm, and she just sort of looked at me, and then started throwing loads of punches at me, as you could see coming out the side of the camera.
That's my girl.
Yeah. So. Anyway, going back to that, yes, it's don't use your hand, don't use your finger. You can use the back of your hand if you want to hit someone in the face, but you can use your wrist because you're actually creating energy with that wrist, so it's better. Of course, you can use like a back fist type of technique using the open hands, but there's nothing wrong with that at all. Just open hand smack straight away. You can even turn your hand to the side and use the edge of the hand like a chop if you want to, and you can aim for the throat too. There's all sorts of ways you can create a reaction. Okay.
Yes.
What you don't want is if you can get the person to collapse dead by hitting him, and while at that point in the technique, then fine, but you are not going to be able to finish the technique. So just from that point of view, wrist is great technique to use, and yes, in answer to your question, that's a great example of how you could use that in the second set.
Right, we will move on to knife defense number 5. Most common mistake?
Common mistake again is footwork. People don't move off to the left fast enough.
Okay.
And then it's a bong sao,
Yeah.
and of course the bong sao encompasses the right hand, right? And if you think, exaggerating this, but if you think in bok pajern, when you first move and you do the finger strikes, and then you move the two blocks high and low back, there's the movement in that. So you're basically bong saoing with the one, your other hand is ready to grab. It's not blocking, but it's ready to grab the hand that you've just bong sao. And as it grabs it, it can rotate it, and the other hand again coming out with that wrist or back of the hand, same thing, and then rotate the arm. Now it's really important. People try to combat this by like fighting back or keeping their arms stiff, and people find this very hard to do, right? Because the arm is kind of upside down, and they can almost arm wrestle with you, right? And you're trying desperately to try and pull them. Now if you resist because you're worried about getting your elbow hurt, because sometimes people are a bit rough and you should tell them to be slow, right? So they hold their elbow slightly bent and try to stop you from forming a lock on it, because they're worried about hurting their elbow, right? So what you're going to do is, rather than try to push down on it, you create a rotation. So what you're doing is creating a circle. So you pull their arm around towards you and then rotating down in an anti-clockwise direction. And as you do that, they can't counter it. They can't hold it, because it's going in a direction that they cannot perceive in time to use muscles, and in that sense there's no muscles to use there. It's very difficult for that rotation. Then it will go into a lock, and you will be able to do the lock without them resisting.
It's a multi faceted lock, that, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. You've got, when you think about the position you're in now, at the end of the scenario, so to speak, you've got your arm wrapped under either their elbow, or you could move up to the tricep there. But what I mean by it's multifaceted, you've got the rotation of the wrist. So if you twist that wrist towards you, you're putting a lot of strain on that wrist, as well as raising up with your forearm on that person's arm, increasing the potency of that elbow lock, if you like. Whilst pushing down as well with that front hand, so you're opposite forces. But then you've got, if it's a very, and this works well with tall people, you can also push up the arm, if you like, as one solid body, if you like, into their towards their shoulder. And what you're actually doing there is pushing up on their shoulder, again increasing a lock, so it becomes a shoulder lock, if you like.
Yeah, you can do that, but then that changes the technique. So although that's a brilliant technique it's really useful, finish,
if you like. But yes, it does change the technique. But
yeah, it's a useful technique to practice for knife defense, and always play with the knife defense. Don't just do the syllabus. But you can, if it's a tall person, the way to get him is to put your left leg behind his leg and press on his knee. He will start to fall, and it will increase the weight on his arm to increase his elbow bend. Sorry, I was just going to say, I want to give people an experiment to do if they don't believe that these kind of things work, and just simply hold the person's arm out as if he's just holding the knife at you. Get your little finger and put it on his palm, or on his, shall we say, his thumb, if you like. And because you've twisted his arm upside down, so his hand is upside down at this time. So put your little finger on his thumb, and then put your forefinger of your left hand just above his elbow, and then make a rotation with your forefinger on his palm, on his thumb, right? And make that rotation and tell me if it hurts. No, don't tell me, tell him. They'll tell you if it hurts, because it bloody will hurt. And all it is, you can even use your little finger, as I said, little finger on his hand where he's holding the knife, upside down. Rotate that little finger round, and they'll get pain in their elbow because you're compressing the joint together.
I tell you what, though, it's one of those things, talking about on the podcast, I have a feeling if you're really unsure as to what we're talking about, and
they're going to ask it, request a video, and I'll get you. I'll send.
And
I'll do a little video on my phone, and I'll demonstrate it, and I'll just send it to you in Messenger. If you need to know that experiment.
Absolutely, guys. As always, all of them. Request a vid. I think we'll press on now to number 6. Go for it. So this one's an interesting one.
Well, it's 3 attacks, isn't it? So you're just trying to fool the person, slash, stab, and he's moving. And there's only one point I'm going to make about this one, because this is a really good point for conjecture, right? And basically, you've done the 2 slashes, changing the hands, change your hand again, stab, and as you stab, he moves out, covers, punches you to the body, okay? Hopefully, you've got to have a little bit of theatrical license here. So he's punching you to the lower ribs, and then he's going to do a kick and a rolling punch. Now, it's really important, okay, that you've punched him. If you do the rolling punch first and then the kick, right, you have more power on the rolling punch and you have more power on the kick. But experiment and find out, as you do the rolling punch, lift the kick up. So that's you when you're changing them around, right? So the way I do it is the punch first, then the rolling punch, of course, and then the kick. And this is how I set it up, because experiment doing different ways, and you'll find that as you raise your rolling fist, you raise your knee. As you strike your fist down, then and only then kick down. So as the fist is coming down, the knee is basically coming up, and then straight away you're pushing it down. I know it's really hard to explain that, isn't it?
It's pretty good explanation. I understand.
Okay, I'll try it in simple fashion so people can do it with the podcast. Right, I've done the punch. Raise the arm to do the rolling punch. And as it's coming down to hit him, bring up your knee.
So just clarify for everybody where that rolling punch is hitting as a target.
Side of his head. Okay, so the rolling punch, side of his head, as it's coming down, the knee's coming up. Okay, now when you do the kick at the back of the leg, you are just kicking, and as you kick, you're pushing your arm away. In other words, you're twisting away to do a really good side kick. you're twisting your body. So as you raise your arm, okay, away from the technique, he's going down anyway. As you raise your arm away from the technique, you're basically twisting your body in a to the left and stamping down with your right leg. So you're increasing the power of that. So not only are you increasing the power of the rolling punch coming down by lifting the leg, you are now increasing the power of the leg by lifting the elbow up.
It can be severely exaggerated because his back is to you, and he's not going to see it anyway. So and
then of course your reverse turning kick comes around to the other temple.
Everyone doesn't like that, the reverse turning kick to the temple, but it's kind of a bit of an elaborate.
It is kind of an elaborate finish off, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, that's why people sort of look at Kung Fu and go, oh, that don't work and whatever. Because to do something like that, you really need to make it work. But do you need it? If it's the same old thing, isn't it? If you're confronted by an individual and you punch them once and they go down, that's all you need. If you have to fight them, hit them more than once, that creates a problem. So ideally every single self-defense technique should be one single move, and that's it. But of course that's not always going to be the case, so you've got to know how to follow it up. But in an ideal world, he attacks you, bang, you counter and hurt him, and that's it. But depends on how much you train.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, I think we've pretty. Listen, there's, as with anything, with such an expansive subject matter as Kung Fu, you can talk about it forever. But hey, we've got to make a swift exit, guys. All right. So I hope that clears up some points on life defense.
Personally, I think it's going to open up a bloody load of questions.
Hopefully,
it's going to open up a web of questions. They're going to be going, I don't do it that way. What about this way? What about if it's this knife or that knife? What if I got a sword? It's going to come out with all sorts now.
Guys,
so
bring it on.
I don't do it this way.
Yeah, we want the correspondence. We really do. We want that. We'd like maybe some of those videos that I do, I may well stick on the Lau Gar Kung Fu podcast because they might help other people too. And I think that's the way forward. I think we, why not?
Yeah.
Guys, as ever, if you could do us a huge favour and you haven't liked us on Facebook or subscribed and follow us on YouTube and whatnot, just please do us this small little courtesy and go and send us a like. We would really appreciate that. This is so important. As you can appreciate, guys, trying to build up a fan base or a profile is quite hard. We're here to try to do our best to help you and answer your questions, at least give you a different point of view on things, and maybe help you to think and start improving yourselves, because that's what it's about. You improve us by asking us questions, and we hopefully can open up the chasm in you. Guys, thank you so much. This would not happen if it wasn't for your support, and we appreciate all your questions and all the rest of it. Guys, keep training hard. Stay safe during this period of time, and we really appreciate you listening to us and taking the time out of your day. All that remains for me to say is goodbye. Take care. Steve, sign off.
Yeah. Goodbye. Have a nice day.
See you guys. Take care. Bye-bye now.
Assume I kick your little Beijing ass right now, man. I ain't scared of you. I know you know that little tricky shit. Come on.
Hi guys, thanks so much for joining us on the Kung Fu podcast. If you like that and you want to find out more about us, you can head over to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram or YouTube and find us under SJN Martial Arts. And also guys, this podcast is available on Podbean and iTunes. So until next time, take care of yourselves and we'll see you again on the Kung Fu podcast.
Now, why doesn't somebody pull off 45 and bang, settle it?
No guns.